Uncle Rod stuff. This will be a new adventure for me. I don't typically talk about such matters, but 2024 election. Hey, why not? My take on it. Disclaimer. Just my view, my opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. You know. Here we go. 2024 election. They got two old white men. Two old white men that a lot of people don't care for. Either way. Which is a quandary. I admit that in a lot of presidential elections, I vote more against one guy than I actually ever vote for someone. I don't know if that's a common thing, but I just can't do it. I can't have that guy, so I got to vote for the other guy. I don't particularly care for the other guy, but he's better than the other guy. So I'm voting against someone as opposed to for someone. Here we go. We got two old white guys. Biden. Lots of experience. Senator, long time. Vice President. Knows he was real handy for Obama. Working the Senate during the Obamacare debates and getting that through. He has always been a politician. I don't think he ever had any other job. Trump supposedly had other jobs. CEO of something. He's been head of something or another, making decisions. Obviously, people will point out that all his decisions in business have been smart ones, and he's filed for bankruptcy several times. I remember Trump Casino in Atlantic City, and I read the other day that the city forced it to be demolished. It had been sitting there empty since he had sold it to whoever it was, and pieces of it were falling now down the boardwalk, and it was considered a safety hazard, so it was totally demolished and now an empty. I don't think it was a city block or anything, but it's an empty lot now. And the owner, he tried to block it, but couldn't do it. Anyway, Trump has experience in some matters, and he was also president at one time. So he has experience in foreign policy, and rightly or wrongly, did he do good foreign policy or bad? I don't know. Biden, good foreign policy or bad? Foreign policy is tough. It is one of the toughest things that the president has to ride over is foreign policy. There's no clear-cut, clean answer when it comes to that. Historically, America has sided with a known quantity over an unknown quantity, rightly or wrongly. We'll back a guy who's in power till it's just obvious that he shouldn't be. In the case of Saddam Hussein, he was, bad guy and weapons of mass destruction, which he apparently didn't have. But we took action and took care of him. Foreign policy. We can be a bully around the world in foreign policy, but I diverge. Presidential election. It's an interesting situation, I think. Let's talk about Biden for a minute. Biden, again, politician his whole life, been in public office as a senator, vice president, and party, Democratic Party, member of it. And the more senior you are in the Democratic Party, more weight you carry, more you're asked about your opinion and your take on various issues. I don't know all the members of the hierarchy of the Democratic Party. I don't know who's president or chairman or what sort of committees they have and who's head of those committees and how they get to head of those committees. But I suspect underneath all of it is what I call party loyalty. And both parties have that. That was something that Trump ran up against on his first election. Um, he didn't have any party loyalties. The party didn't want him. They didn't want him running as a Republican. So he didn't. He was an outsider. He did not have party loyalty. But Democrats have been good on their base of various groups, and they do have a lot of different segments of the population. What's considered in their base of voters. Best example I can think of is black Americans are typically classified or identified or pointed out as Democrats. And they are a bloc which have voted historically for the Democratic candidate. It didn't make any difference who that candidate was. And there are other groups who believe, like extreme example of that is Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, yeah. Who are extreme to the left, and they think that, Bernie was saying 4-day work week, same amount of pay. Elizabeth Warren been honking on student loan forgiveness for 8 years. And she's the one, I think, who forced it into the platform, or Democratic platform last time, that Biden agreed to, and then has tried to accomplish that. In my way of thinking, he didn't really have the power to do that. But apparently there are some wordings that can be interpreted in the whole laws that set up student loan program. And I think he has stretched those laws to encompass extreme. It was started with the COVID, of course. You don't have to make payments during COVID. And then, okay, well, we'll just take this extreme. You don't have to pay it back at all if you've been paying for this long, or we didn't do a good accounting on your payments, and a lot of good reasons. And he put it through. I don't think he had the authority to do that. I always take back either party, either president, any president, stand up saying, I promise we're going to spend $50 billion on this or that. The president doesn't. He has to get Congress to approve spending. There are funds, discretionary funds, he has control over, and all of the departments have some sort of funds that are discretionary or something, and he can, command that department to do this or that with those funds. So he does have some power over funding, but to be promising all the time to spend money on this and that, the poor farmers need this and that, or the car manufacturers are going to suffer under the Chinese invasion of electric vehicles. We're going to do something about that. We're going to put tariffs on the way. Anyway, back on election, we got two old white guys. Biden, party loyalty. He had a disastrous debate. He's come up with a lot of excuses for it, and I couldn't hear his voice very well. He obviously had a cold. I'm not. He didn't have the vigor and vitality that he really should have been able to display, so it didn't help him any. Now, as Nancy Pelosi said, is this an episode or a condition? And I think it was an episode of a condition he has. He's 81 years old, and this is like, I find it crazy personally that someone born male or female decides that they really are they're the opposite, and that's what they want to be known as from here on. They ignore the biological fact. Men competing in women's sports, to me, is totally wrong. You're ignoring, it's just a fact. You're born male or female. There are other groups, of course, but you're ignoring a fact. And with Biden, I think is the last year or so, if he hasn't been reading off a teleprompter, and he could still read, He hasn't been free-form thought in a year. And you have to also remember he didn't have to bait anybody during the primaries. He's had very few news conferences. They keep him hidden. He stays hidden. And there's a reason for that. He's got a condition. At 81, hopefully I'm not as bad as he is right now, but that's not to say. I don't do well standing on my feet anyway. Anyway, party loyalty. I think certain people of the party have talked to him and said you ought to step down. You know, there's even questions that have come up about whether he's fit to hold office now. And, that's a hard road to hoe, and if they started it now, he wouldn't be out by election time anyway if you try to say he's unfit for office, so that's a moot point. Anyway, party loyalty. He says he's staying in, and I think party underneath of it, well, if they replace him, who are they going to replace him with? Well, I think it's become clear they only really have one option, and that's Kamala Harris. Now, I see stuff back and forth all the time. Could she beat Trump? Well, there haven't been a lot of polling on that. Her polling numbers just on her have been miserable, sometimes lower than Biden's low approval rating. And but if you think about it, she is a black and a woman, which would at least, if Biden has been losing some of the black vote by his various policies, immigration being one of them, which people want to say, I don't know the truth of the matter, but it doesn't matter if it's true or not, just if it's perceived, that immigrants are taking away jobs that blacks normally have or could have if they wanted them or anything like that. And crime and violence, the drugs coming across the border, blah, 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 that Biden hasn't been a real friend to black population, and his steady support in the black community. Again, I read reports that it's slipping and sliding, and other reports say it's holding fast. I don't know. I don't think it's a block that he can count on 100%. I find it strange. My wife was saying at one time she wasn't sure she was even going to vote this year, and that goes back to I don't like either one of them. So I just won't vote at all. And I don't think you should do that. You should vote. I don't care who for, but you know, that starts a bad trend. You're just not voting. Well, and who the hell elects these people? If not us, not you and me. Anyway, Kamala Harris looks like the only real option they have. If Biden were to drop out, and that, you know, she has some experience, but she's black and female, so there are women who will vote for her because she's a woman. End of story. And blacks will vote for her because she's black. End of story. So there is some thought that perhaps Kamala Harris can be a viable candidate and beat Donald Trump. I don't know. Looks like Biden's going to stick, and if he does, then we have party loyalty, and party loyalty is going to stick with him, and I think it's time that party loyalty of an end of its own, and that party loyalty is more important than winning a particular issue or winning a presidency or getting control of the House or the Senate. Party loyalty is, I think, that's at the top of the pyramid for the political parties. Party loyalty. You do what we tell you to do. If somebody makes a decision on what our position will be, you're a House of Representatives guy or you're a senator guy, you're told what you're supposed to do on this particular issue, how you're supposed to vote. Party loyalty. I think party loyalty needs to fracture and go away. I mean, I understand it's an important issue, but it's balling things up now. There seems to be little or no room for compromise between the two parties because of party loyalty. And I don't even know what parties stand for. It's sound bites. Everybody knows Democrats are for the poor guy and the middle class, and Republicans are for rich people and corporations. And the sound bite. I think that's the general stereotype that Americans have of the two parties. Neither one is correct, of course. It's much thicker and more involved in that and varies from issue to issue. Not all Republicans are against abortion. Not all Democrats are for abortion. Just not all. They might not be talking about it much because the party says you're supposed to be for abortion. Party loyalty. Party loyalty, if Joe doesn't drop out, party loyalty is going to come back in place, and maybe not as strong as it would be if they hadn't had that terrible debate. But I think I don't think Biden is going to win if he continues his run for the presidency against Trump. He has to be out and about, even if he's reading off a teleprompter. And I think he does have an underlying condition, and he's going to have more episodes. It's going to be clear. There's no way you can keep him in the basement of the White House for the next 4 months or whatever it is. And it will become clear to everybody that he is he's an old white guy. Okay, party loyalty. Party loyalty is probably going to, and people have been questioning and saying, well, if we hang with Biden, then it's probably affect the down races, the representatives in the House, and maybe even at the state level as opposed to representatives and whatever they call their senators there, or governors. All these downstream elections where you only have two choices, Republican or Democrat, that the Democratic side will be hurt if Biden stays in and loses the presidency. Now, it's not clear to me that that's the case. Hopefully elections at downstream are based on the quality of the candidate as opposed to the particular party. Yes, they're carrying the party banner and loyalties to issues that the party tells them they should be associated with, or they don't get funding from the Democratic National Committee if they don't. Now, that's the way this works. So, the impact downstream of Biden running, I don't know. If there was somebody up for re-election, a senator or a congressman, who had been waving Biden's banner that he's 100% correct on this and 100% correct on that, and he should go a little farther on student loan forgiveness, or he did a great job on the border. He's been doing a great job on the border. If that was their position, they're allowed to be a target, and they may lose their re-election. Not particularly because of Biden, just the fact that they supported Biden on various issues, and now his credibility and his mental awareness is being questioned. You have to wonder, how about all these other issues that he has reigned over for the last 4 years? You're going to put it on his shoulders, rightly or wrongly, which is what always happens, but like the economy, the inflation, that's not all his fault. But he'll take, the blame rests on him. And if the president stand up and say, I had the best, like Trump does, I had the best economy we've ever had, if you want to take the credit for it, then you're unfortunately also going to be looked at the cause of inflation or bad economy. It's not the president's job to keep the economy within a narrow range of growth or our domestic gross domestic product. That's not his job. That's not nowhere in the Constitution that says, you're president of the economy and you're supposed to got other mechanisms and so on, including free enterprise system that has a lot to do with that. I think the major issue related to inflation, again I'm diverting, is taxation. We have a lot of taxing authorities. One of them don't care what the other one's doing. State, I'm sure we're getting ready to have a sales tax increase here locally. I think the state approved it, so counties would be silly not to jump on it and get more revenue. Real estate taxes, income taxes, estate taxes, the tax list goes on, utility taxes, personal property taxes. They keep raising those things and it cuts into the amount of discretionary income that individuals living in the United States have. And it gets, all these taxes have to be added on to the end cost of a good or service. Companies are not in business, they're for profit. They can't just simply eat an increase of tax from any taxing authority, be it local, state, federal, or even foreign, I don't know. Okay. Biden, I think he's going to stick in. I think he's probably going to lose because his credibility has been questioned and the perception is enough to do you in. Let's talk about Trump. I don't like him as a man at all. I really don't. His policies are more in line with my thinking than certainly Biden. I am an independent, but I tend to vote Republican. I did vote for Bill Clinton. I think I voted for Obama one time. I mean, it just depends. Again, probably a vote against whoever the other candidate was as opposed to for. I think for Clinton I did vote for him, absolutely. I liked him. I thought he was a reasonable, middle of the road sort of Democrat as opposed to being too far left for me. Anyway, Trump. He doesn't scare me. His policies don't scare me. People, they do scare a lot of people. He is not Hitler incarnate. He's got a terrible mouth on him. He's a motor mouth. You know, I've sent him emails 40 times. I exaggerate. Telling him, just shut up. Let your policies do the talking for you. Instead of this monolithic foot in your mouth stuff that he does all the time, but he won't listen to me. He doesn't listen to anybody as far as I can tell. But his policies are more aligned, and underneath all that, I do have faith in one of the aspects of the American government, and that is checks and balances. Now, I don't have faith in a lot of American government as an institution, as the central controlling power of the United States. I think they have a lot of departments and bureaucrats have overreached and overstepped. And I was glad to see, and I am glad to see, the Supreme Court step in and say, when the EPA did this or EPA that, they had little or no legal basis to do so. They were hanging it off some law that may have been passed 40 years ago, and in some sentence of some law passed 40 years ago, and they were reading between the lines to say, we could do this. And the Supreme Court was saying, no, it's not in that sentence. You don't have the authority to do that. Now, that's not the end of the story here. If you don't know, and I hope you do, like Roe v. versus Wade, everybody's crying the blues. All you need to do is get the Congress and Senate to pass a law making it a woman's right to abortion. That's all you need to do. Or a constitutional amendment. That's all you need to do. I don't know why it's so hard. Everybody's blaming the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court looked through everything and said, I can't find a law anywhere that says women have the right to vote. Now you have right to abortion. Now you can say, well, that should be a given. I'm not arguing that, but it was the way things are raw. If it's not written down in a law, then from a legal point of view, the Supreme Court said, look, I can't find anything that guarantees a woman a right to abortion. The answer is you pass a law. Can you get a law passed through the current Congress that'll do that? Probably not. That's not the Supreme Court's problem. They just review the legality of the issue at hand. When they struck down some of the EPA regulations, I thought good for them. I was very disappointed with Supreme Court that when Obama said, okay, well, all you people who signed up at state healthcare websites can't get subsidy toward your payments. because the law originally had been said that if you had used the state, you would get the subsidy. If you had signed up at the federal website, you didn't. They were encouraging states to do the healthcare, sign up for Obamacare. And then all those people signed up at the federal website, well, this isn't fair. Okay, so Obama said, just stroke a pen, said, yeah, we'll make it so everybody gets the subsidy. Well, Supreme Court, went up to Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court looked at it and said, well, the law says only if you signed up through a state health website do you get the subsidy. But, in our opinion, that's really not what it meant. And that's where they were wrong. The Supreme Court is not interpreting law in a certain way, slanted one way or the other. If it's not there, if it wasn't in black and white, if it isn't in the words, then it's no. Easy fix. Pass a new law. If you want it, you get the Congress, the Senator to come back together and say, okay, everybody who signed up at the federal level for Obamacare now gets a subsidy. That's the solution. I don't know why everybody cries and moans Roe v. Wade and abortion rights. Just get a law passed. Just lobby and elect the people you want to get them in Congress and Senate who will pass such a law. Trump, checks and balances. It's really obvious that there's a whole, just tons and tons of lawyers making a good living suing the federal government, or the federal government suing some state over some issue or another. And every law seems like gets challenged by somebody on some sort of basis. I don't care what it is. So we certainly got checks and balances from at least a legal point of view. And so if Trump does this or that, he signs an executive order that's just off the wall, it will be challenged immediately and go into the courts. It may take a while. Courts are slow. But if it's not right, it'll be thrown out. We do have checks and balances. Now that I am seeing plenty of that in the way of legal things going on. Everything is, Texas sues the federal government for not doing a good job or even enforcing laws in the books for immigration. And so they start doing things to protect themselves. And then the feds say, you can't do that because immigration is our. It very clearly says in the Constitution or whatever that immigration is a federal responsibility. And Texas says, but you're not doing the job and I got to do something. And the Fed says, you still can't because it's a federal thing. That sort of back and forth lawsuits are going on. And that, in essence, for me, is checks and balances. So Trump being president doesn't scare me because there are checks and balances. Yeah, he'll do a bunch of executive orders. Every one of them will be challenged by a Democratic governor or senator or congressman or some party group or group out there somewhere, the people of defense league. That doesn't bother me. Foreign policy for Trump, he told NATO, yeah, he speaks in such terms that he doesn't really mean what he says all the time, but that's, the media doesn't know how to deal with that. And they'll talk it to death, and right or wrong, he didn't know the power of any uttered word out of his mouth. And so, as a good example of that is that when he got looking at NATO, we were spending the bulk of the money for keeping NATO some kind of quasi-recognizable organization. We have responsibilities to them, and they supposedly have responsibilities to us. Now, if you think about it, I don't think if the United States was invaded, that Denmark or even England or France or Germany, whoever's in NATO would. How are they going to ship troops over here to help us? It's more like we're signed up to help them. And he was saying, you're not doing enough to defend yourself. And he looks, and we're spending so much percent of our gross domestic product on defense. You look at these countries over in NATO, they're not spending squat. So he said, look, if you guys don't pick up your game and start spending money on your own defense, why should I even be part of NATO? It's like as soon as you get invaded, you have to call for help because you don't have any military anymore. So he threw out the threat. It was a threat. And what happened? Not all, but a lot of those NATO countries have stepped up to their defense spending, particularly since the whole Putin and Ukraine business. Because they do see they got a threat on their back door. They could have a land war right there. It's not as if the Chinese are going to invade them. That, how to get 1 million Chinese into Europe, not an easy thing. The United States isn't going to invade them. We don't do that stuff yet. Depends. Well, if you got oil and you got a dictator, we might just do it. But nonetheless, what happened? And that's the Biden campaign thing is, Trump has sent the wrong message to NATO that he could pull out at any time. Our allies must trust us. It really wasn't what Trump was trying to do. It really wasn't. He was trying to get them to pick up the slack. What's the point of having NATO if these countries say they don't spend $1 on defense? Putin invades because they don't have anybody, no military at all. And then they pick up the phone and say, help, we need some help over here because we can't defend ourselves. Trump was saying no. And I think rightly so. Was he sending the wrong message to allies? Was saying, look, if you don't pick up the slack, I don't even want to be a part of this anymore. No, I don't think he was sending the wrong message. He does talk off the top of his head. He says all kind of crazy crap, some of which he's always, everything is asbestos and never seen it like it before and all that. And you just have to dismiss all that. I don't fear him. There's checks and balances. The Supreme Court, Democrats will fight every single thing he does. I don't know if he'll be able to get anything through the legislature, Congress, and Senate. If the House were to go much stronger Republican, and by some chance the Senate would also get at least some simple majority Republican, it would help that he might be able to get some laws through that Democrats particularly would not like. And there are a lot of issues that he could stand up on, and only having one term left to go, he can't run again. If he were to win, he couldn't run again anyway. He might, in his wisdom, decide it's time to do something about this or that and cut it back, reshape it, reformulate the rules on any issue. I know he's looking to, one of the things Biden did right away was shut down all the oil pipelines that were in production, in planning, in construction, bringing oil from Canada or some other such place, or moving oil from such and such somewhere else, or a natural gas pipeline that was going to go from here to there. He said, no. Oh, that's all gone. I would expect Trump, if he gets elected, to resurrect all those energy-related programs. Are they fossil fuel? Yeah, probably. Is he dismissing and going to just ignore the green issue? I don't think so, but he might try. I know he has a view of it. He doesn't. There's enough checks and balances, I think, in the system. I would like to see more checks and balances actually on Biden. His executive order, some of them he didn't have the authority to do those things. I'd like to get rid of executive orders, period. I don't think the president, he's not a king. This is like decree. The king puts out a decree. Thou shalt buy health insurance. That's what Obama did. Even though you don't need it, you don't want it, you're 20 years old, you have to buy health insurance. because they're healthy. You never going to use it, but we need the money that you're going to pay the health insurance company to pay for the health insurance of all people. That was part of the decree. The king decreed. It actually was put in law, of course. It is still a law as far as I know, but in the wisdom of the administrations, they said, we'll just forget that. Just forget it. In the same way, the Obamacare supposedly was going to have a luxury tax on insurance policies that were offered by companies to their employees, beyond that often added more benefits or cost less money than some sort of standard artificially created insurance policy and its benefits. Well, the unions in the United States, all usually in the Democratic camp, yeah, until they were, somebody didn't even look at it, or they did, but it was okay. It was 10 years down the road. Well, when the time was up, then they were facing this tax that they have to pay on their luxury health care insurance. And then they got all pissy and moany about it. Wait a minute, we don't want this. And again, the administration just forget it. I don't know why it was never challenged by the Republican Party. I know why. It's an unfavorable thing to be challenging on. I mean, why did they write in the law to begin with? But it's in the law, but they ignore it. That's another side issue for me, is arbitrarily enforcing or not enforcing a law is a bad thing to do. Just bad. It sends the wrong message. Debt relief. I think it sends the wrong message. And the message is that you're responsible long term for actions. If the government in wisdom say, you don't need to worry about it, you don't need to pay off that student debt, what kind of message is that sending? Well, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. That's what it sends. Don't worry about it, we take care of it. So that permeates into every possible action that an individual could take in the United States. I don't need to worry about it, take care of it. In San Francisco, they raised the limit on where they charge an individual with a criminal act up to $500 or $800. You could steal stuff up to that value and there'd be no criminal charges put against you. It wouldn't even arrest you. What kind of message does that send? Okay. Here is where I think Trump will probably try to reverse some of that stuff. He'll try to shift it the other way. Will he go too strong? Probably. And he will get challenged in the justice system. There'll be challenges to this rule, that rule. If he does away or tries to do away with the Department of Education, it'll be challenged in the courts. Maybe even the House and Senate will come up and bring a new law and override them and do something different. The checks and balances. Is he going to start a nuclear war? No. That's insanity. He's an old white guy, but he's not that old, and he's just not that old. Push come to shove, I have no idea what any president's going to do if Russia, Putin, uses battlefield tactical nuclear weapons. I don't know. We threatened to do it back in the early 70s against what was called the Warsaw Pact at the time. If we had NATO, and the Soviet Union at that time had what was called the Warsaw Pact. Bunch of different countries who had pledged to each other if one was attacked, they would all come to the defense. And the only way we could have stopped the Warsaw Pact from taking over Europe and solely destroying NATO would have been use battlefield tactical nuclear weapons. And I don't think we have them anymore, or at least we're saying we don't. But the Russians have made noises that they do have them and they could use them. I don't know. I think they're reserving their use for defensive purposes. If we were to be invaded by NATO or the United States or even Ukraine tried to invade them, they may use Israelis to have nuclear weapons. I think those are in their hip pocket. If they were about to be overrun, if they were being invaded by all directions, all the countries that surround them en masse an army and came from them from all directions, they, I think, reserve the right to use tactical battlefield nuclear weapons because that's the only way they could defend themselves. That would be the only thing that would stave off disaster. Another disaster with nuclear weapons. But anyway, it's been talking about the election. I don't think there's any good answer to this. How do we get to this point? Probably party loyalty, and both parties loyal to themselves as opposed to what's good for the country, and lack of compromise, rigid positions. I wish we had 3 more parties. I think India just had their elections or something over there. I think they have 15 or 20 or 100 parties, and their governmental organizations have all these different faction groups, and so they have to fight among themselves to get anything passed, which I'm okay for. I'm okay that Republicans and Democrats fight over issues in Congress, and if they can't win the fight, then I guess that law just doesn't get passed. I don't like it when one party has the presidency, the House, and the Senate. That, I think, every time that has not been a good situation, and I really would prefer that not to happen this time. If Trump gets elected president, again, it's okay with me because checks and balances. However, if the House went strongly Republican to the point, and all they have to do to pass a law in the House is simple majority. Now in the Senate, you don't, although you have to have a majority when it comes up to, okay, we're going to even put this on the floor for a vote. You have to have a majority who agree with that. Yeah, it should go up for a vote. If you don't have a majority to even agree on that, it never comes to the floor for a real vote. But when it comes to the floor for a real vote, you need like 70. 70 out of 100 got to vote for this thing. So I don't believe the Senate would ever shift that heavily in any one direction. It's currently 50-50. There's no way that the Senate, I think, is going to go Republican during the 2024 election. When I mean go that way, that they would have enough majority to bring something to the floor and pass it without any Democrat support at all. I don't see that happening. It just in one election. So that would have to be a long-term trend. So Trump can try this and that. He can propose legislation, and the House Republicans, if they got a supermajority or whatever, they could propose this and that. But there's going to be checks and balances, and I think the Senate is going to have a lot of power in the next coming years, and they'll be the ones who have to figure out compromise, party compromise, and the whole thing with loyalty. And I would like to see term limits myself. The people, Mitch McConnell and Schumer, or whatever his name is, those guys they're all white guys. They've been around forever. They've been politicians their whole life. And they don't know how to pour a piss from a boat right. They wouldn't know how to change the tire if they saw a tire on the car. They wouldn't know how to do anything. It's all done for them. They don't worry about such trivial matters. And they shouldn't have to, I understand. On the other hand, there is understanding of what the human experience is when your water heater breaks at 3 in the morning, and instead of whatever the senators and congressmen do, which is not like you and me. Anyway, 2024 election, Biden is going to hang on. Party loyalty is going to he's not going to win, because party loyalty is already degraded. They cannot keep them all in line, and the population down there, as much as they plead and beg and so on, and people thinking that Biden did a good job on the economy for the last 4 years, those have got to be slim and far between. And he can talk about it till he turns the rain in the face, you know, that's part of the aspect. When you're out saying things are good, they're going to get better, things are good, and you're going to the grocery store and you're paying more for lettuce this weekend than last week or whatever, it diminishes his credibility. I mean, as simple as that. And for him to keep reciting the same way with Johnson, you know, in the Vietnam War, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We just need a few more months. We need a few more men. We need a couple more bombs, but we got this. We're going to win. Yeah, we've had a lot of casualties, and that's bad, but we've got to stop the communists here. And he just kept this diatribe up, and the reality did not match what he was saying. And that's a disclaimer. Politicians can lie. Trump lies. Well, big whoop. They all do. They always have. Politicians are not. In fact, the Supreme Court ruled that in politicians, when they do campaign ads, when they say the other guy eats babies for breakfast, or that his mother was a whore, or whatever they said, it's not slander because it's a political advertisement. And politicians are known to lie. Lie being a big word, exaggeration of the truth, looking at only one half of the truth, or flipping it upside down and saying things are really good with your head below water. You just wait enough and you'll flip back up the other way. Politics. Biden loses, Trump does win, probably pardons himself, I don't know. Starts a bunch of executive orders. Throws out cabinet people here and there, tries to put in all of his loyalists, but there are checks and balances. And will Trump get anything done during this if he wins? I'm not sure. I don't even know. Again, he has no loyalty in the House or the Senate. He doesn't have GOP loyalty. They might go along with him a little more this time than they did the first time, but probably not much. They are not his candidate. They didn't really want him the first time. They don't really want him now. They're being more amenable to him this time than the last, but only in media word. Enough. Biden loses, Trump wins, checks and balances, keep them in place, sort of. Chaos. I never saw a Trump presidency as chaos myself. They claim, Democrats claim it was chaotic the whole time. I don't remember it that way, but then, anyway, this is Politics 2024. We're in we get in this situation. Two old white guys, and nobody likes either one of them. I mean, by what power mechanism did the American population vote to have these people as candidates? I mean, there were primaries held in Republican, Democrat, whatever. Under what? Do these people really reflect? Individual voters sprinkled throughout the United States say this is the best we got to run for president? How did that happen? Or is the whole, republic democracy thing where the individual votes count and votes do count for something, is that all illusion? The parties decide who's going to be this, that, and the other thing, and it's always amazing to me. Of course, we only got two parties, but all elections seem to be 49-51 or 48-52. It's like it's split magically, 50-50. And I know only two parties. Well, it's going to have to go in there, one or the other, but. Why it never turns out to be 40-60. It never turns out to be 45-55. It hasn't been like that in a long time. It's always so close. We're talking, a million or two vote difference out of whatever it is. And I find that really strange, to tell you the truth. I'm not saying vote fraud. I'm not saying any of that stuff. It just seems odd, as if we have the illusion of the power. But the vote is always so close. It's like, it's just amazing. Yeah, I know, two parties. If you had 40 parties, then the votes would be percentages would be all over the place, and would be more obvious that, you know, well, there's only two. Anyway, Uncle Ron stuff. This is the 2024 election. Disclaimer, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I never do, but hey, it's hot outside and it's cool in here.